have you fully embraced this new playoff model? Do you have any concerns about the length of the season and the number of games for these football players?
Yeah, I have, that's a great one. I have a concern about the length of the season, and I've actually had concerns about, the football student athlete experience practice-wise overall. I don't worry about the games. Football players don't play that many games, frankly. So it's really about, making sure that you have a culture where the coach and your support staff, everybody understands, you got to manage practice. You got to take care of their bodies. The muscle tissue issues, all those type of things. Athletes will, there's athletes who have a high tolerance for pain. Tommy Eichenberg, high tolerance for pain. If his shoulder was out, he'd tape it up and keep playing. So you got to help him from himself. So having coaches understand that part is critical. It's critical. Now this is for all sports, but in this case, football, I worry more about just the practice part and the wear and tear on their bodies, and making sure that our sports science and our coaches are aligned to make sure you mitigate any issues. The games they don't play. If you ask a football player, they want to play more games. It's just minimize this practice thing that's become year-round.
There's a million things we could talk about around the integration of these 4 new teams into the Big Ten.
Yeah.
In particular, the football schedule, what the Big Ten came up with, do you feel good about obviously maintaining the Ohio State-Michigan game, but for instance, not maintaining the Ohio State-Penn State game? How do you think the Big Ten did when it came to working out these new football schedules?
I think we did pretty good. There's probably going to be changes down the road. Your first iteration of a model will be modified over time as we learn different things down the road. But I think it worked out pretty good. The Penn State thing, they're a competitive rivalry. They're not a historical rivalry like the team up north is. So giving that up periodically was the right thing to do for the overall good of the league. We were very strong that when we go west, we're going to have a bye date afterwards. Can that be maintained over time? I don't know. We'll learn that. But some of us were strong in the room that was important. So I think we did pretty good, but like with all of our sports, as those schedules are built, we'll get feedback from coaches and others, and a couple years from now, the model might change slightly based upon what we learn.
Player compensation. There was just the rule, the law passed in Virginia, I guess today, even of that now NIL can come inside athletic departments. I think we all see where it's moving. Where does this end? And is it necessary? Will it be good? Can it work for athletic departments to directly pay athletes, or at least some athletes? And what are the trade-offs that may be made with that when it comes to filling the other 35 sports?
Yeah, that's the big elephant in the room. I think, will it work? Yeah, it'll work. You just have to figure out how. I just don't know what the revenue share model is going to be. There's going to be some revenue share. And obviously, football is very much a part of that. So I look at it this way, just simplifying it. It's room, board, books, and tuition, cost of attendance, Austin money, and I'm hopeful that it's NIL rights, whatever that number is. And so hopefully that happens. And for us, if not knowing what the court case is going to be, if it's just 85 scholarships or 125 football players, but you got 125 football players, you got 13 basketball players, you're at 138. So you got to, for us at least, you got to find 138 women on the other side. So you got 276 student athletes. You got to figure out what that model is. What is that other number I call it NIL rights. Then you create a licensing program for all of your student athletes. You bring NIL in-house like Virginia's doing, and you allow the university and you allow the athletic department to be able to do NIL deals for those student athletes. And the beauty part of that is you could create profiles for those student athletes. And, I used to, Zed Key's going to Dayton now, but I used to always say, well, God, we should get him a deal with an auto parts company, because the guy likes to work on cars. Or those of you who went to the Peach Bowl and saw Matt Jones bowl, I'm like, God, we missed a boat on that. We would have been, he's a 300 bowler. We should have had him working at a bowling alley. Whatever.
Yeah.
So you find those things that they're good at or interested in, and I think that's the model that I would say is a framework for the future.
But not sharing TV money?
Oh yeah, that's the revenue share. So excuse me. So whatever that is, that number is, it would come from TV money, corporate sponsorship, ticket sales. So yes, that revenue share, and actually, let's break it down, it's still house case in California. Whether it's settled or go to court, I don't know. But they're at the plaintiffs, with Jeffrey Kessler as the attorney, who's phenomenal. I got a lot of respect for him. I think they started at 50% of those dollars, media rights dollars, corporate dollars. So who knows what it's going to end up at. But that's, in my view, that's the one where it's going to tell us this is what it's going to be.
The idea of a super league for college football is something that has been sort of floated out there for a long time. Mm-hmm. Would you be in favor of that? Do you think we will get to that, a world where we're not dealing with the Big Ten or a conference discussion like that, where maybe there's the 35 wealthiest or biggest football teams are in a different tier, and it's just a different model completely? Do you think we will get there? Would you be in favor of it?
I don't know if we'll get there or not. I think we got to be open to that conversation, when what the private equity people are talking about. So I read about it, and I haven't paid a lot of attention to it. I would be more concerned about the revenue share. It's 70 teams I think I read about and heard about, but the Ohio States of the world aren't going to feed everybody.
But hasn't Ohio State fed everybody during your tenure?
No, we've only fed some of the teams in our league, and they've fed us. We got to play somebody. So at the end of the day, you're talking 70 versus 18, and you're talking, 16 in the SEC. So it's simple math. At the end of the day, and then, by the way, we're not the only school in our league that feeds others. Mm-hmm. So now you're talking 70. I struggle with that, and then maybe there's something I'm missing on the private equity side, and I'm not in the mix. So but I think we got to pay attention to that. We got to listen. We got to learn, because maybe that might be the right model. But I know this. I won't be in the seat, but places like Ohio State, if they're in that model, it can't be like the NFL model where revenue is shared equally. We don't draft, we recruit. And we chase championships and make investments to chase championships in football. Everybody else doesn't do that. We've had many conversations. You've said this many times in your tenure, like a rising tide lifts all boats. Mm-hmm. And that Ohio State, sometimes I've said, Gene, why doesn't Ohio State throw its weight around more in the Big Ten? And you wanted the Big Ten to succeed as a group. Right. We saw when Texas threw its weight around in the Big 12, it basically blew up the Big 12. This seems like a different conversation now. And is this because if we're entering a world where universities are going to pay players directly, money is already driven a lot in college sports. But if we're entering this new reality, a place like Ohio State is going to have to be a little more looking out for itself, and we're not as interested in sharing revenue equally, because you've shared revenue equally in the Big Ten since you got here. Yeah, in the Big Ten, but it's simple math. You're talking about 70 schools versus 18 schools. But now we're talking about, I shouldn't pick on these schools, but schools that aren't in the Big Ten or the SEC. So Texas and Alabama are going in the SEC. They're sharing revenue with schools that don't bring in the same amount of revenue. Now you're talking about 70. Maybe there's something I obviously don't see.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm not going to pull out names, but I don't have a problem with sharing revenue with the teams in our league. And we're not the only ones. You know, the team up north, Penn State, I mean, they're sharing revenue with teams in our league. But now you're saying you're going to add more of those teams.
Yeah.
That's a problem.